thanks the sponsors for making this available and happen. And also, if you have a chance, please fill out some feedback. Information is located on your ticket and also on the website on the schedule page. And today we have Tim Prendergast. Please give a welcome applause. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Let me adjust this thing. So I was conscious of the fact that I stand between you guys and the bar, which thank you, whoever organized me to be the fall guy for that one. But there's so much material to cover here. I kind of took approach to give you guys kind of the seeds of thinking about the change in approach and the change in paradigm here. And I'll talk through some technical examples, but I'm not going to go through a bunch of demos or dive into a bunch of code examples because it's something that actually is better suited for you to explore in a journey on your own. But let's explore today kind of what it means to take a rugged DevOps approach to securing and protecting the cloud, which is really, as everyone thinks about it, it's just your data center that someone else is hosting for you now, or it's the data center you host that's used in a very different way. Of all the things that happened around this cloud movement, I think the most exciting thing that's happening now is specifically around security. Sure, it's cool to like elasticize workloads and have, something where I can spin up and down resources on demand and just pay for what I use. But the value it brings when we talk about the approach we take to security and the challenges we face as we move into this era are far more exhilarating. And while people get excited about like, hey, I can run it, there's a few servers or 1,000 servers, the idea that, hey, of all those servers, they can take dynamic security postures on. They can be reflexive and react to the kinds of requests that are coming into them. And these changes can happen in the seconds time frames is a totally different paradigm than what we've been used to in security. And it's something that we should really think about and start taking advantage of. Going to give you guys like the step one, because I don't know everyone's background. What is cloud? I'll settle this argument that people have had forever. Is a programmatic infrastructure. It could be anything that falls under that. But think of it in the sense that it's API-driven infrastructure. It's not what VMware is going to sell you guys. It's not what Amazon Web Services specifically tells you it is. It really is a different way for us to interface with infrastructure that goes beyond that rack and stack approach we took. And since I reference it, what is DevOps? If I ask people to raise hands, I'm sure everyone pretty much knows. It is really just smart people building things in a more intelligent way. I mean, it means automation. It means scale. It means just get away from kind of the typical behaviors we used to do. So when you think about this acceleration towards deploying infrastructure and applications and services we call DevOps, there's specific needs that have arisen that drive people to get into this state. And those needs are specifically focused around flexible, rapid iterations and testing and validation of what you're doing, and then iterating forward on that, meaning don't wait 6 months to put this new innovation out there for your users. It means wait a week after you see people start using what you've built, and then learn how they're using it, learn the cool things you can do with it, and then iterate forward on that. At the same time, security has never gone away. I mean, all of us are here for a particular reason. All of us here have jobs that focus some aspect on this. We have to bring to a business or an entity some sense of control, some sense of stability, some sense of risk aversion, because we all know that a major compromise tends to end a lot of small, medium businesses. And large businesses, while they kind of slough them off, suffer massive reputational damage over time. If I surveyed the crowd and had everyone just shout out the name of a company that like has a bad reputation for security, I know probably the 5 or 6 that most everyone's going to shout out. And that's a sad state in the industry, but it's also telling to how we as humans emotionally connect to people not doing everything they can to protect us. The thing that's really interesting about this is we've inadvertently just jammed these two worlds together. And we did that because security is still a relevant function for a business, but the business has also said we have to move faster. And historically, acceleration is not the best friend of security. The dynamics and the mass change introduces a little bit of chaos and makes it harder to derive signal from noise, right? But there's a new way for us to actually think about doing this where you can actually have kind of the best of both worlds. And this is a thing that I kind of struggle with, which is I have to step out of my traditional ivory tower, paratrooper, knight in shining armor, save the day kind of role where you do incident response, and that's like the end of the security discussion with a lot of people, and that's where you convince them to be part of the solution, and into this educator role and this embracing role of like, hey, you know, the guy on the other side of the phone that's building this application and managing this infrastructure is a really bright person. He just hasn't had 15 years of getting his butt kicked in this industry like I have. And if I could actually teach him or enable him in some way to not have to go through that same pain that I went through and learn from what I'm trying to tell him is the right way to do things, without me being the guy with the big stick, then we could actually come out way ahead. And just a quick survey. Who here thinks you have enough people at your company doing security? I'll see you outside, buddy. Who here has open job recs for security engineers? Yeah, basically everybody. So this is the pain point we see. We can't just poof into existence enough people to actually, manage security. We can't say, oh, cool, next year's graduating class is coming out fully ready to come protect the infrastructure we've been building for years. It's one of those things where you have to take advantage of the people that you can kind of train up. And what's really interesting is the people that really get this right now are those engineers and product teams that are building the infrastructure that you have been used to protecting in the data center that you now have to do in the cloud. So this paradigm's totally shifted. The one thing that you see that's really different here is not only the ownership aspect of the infrastructure layer, but really how we've kind of taken these broader concepts where we built walls around the garden, right? And saying we actually have resources that can exist for 7 minutes. I didn't get up in my data center, had 1,000 servers yesterday and 200 a day, like you've been robbed, right? I also didn't get up and walk in there expecting to see a 1 rack of service and I have like 500 racks of service. It doesn't happen in the data center. So your expectation of things being static is how we built security around it. We said, cool, I can put zones for network and traffic domains in place. I can put firewalls around those. I can actually put IDS, IPS in line of everything I own. I have ways to get what I want to get so I can try and do my job better. The cloud basically took that and threw it out the window and said, by the way, you don't own this and you're not allowed to come plug directly into it and just trust us. We're doing everything for you. The reality of the situation is they do everything below a certain layer, but you as the customer own everything that's really relevant. The app layer, the network traffic stack. What's kind of really changed is the way you interface with these cloud infrastructure services, right? So you think about it. Has anyone here done API programming like Tickle, Expect, that kind of stuff against like old firewalls, Pixes, IDS, IPS? It's terrible. Nothing's the same. The unifying constant of cloud infrastructure that's programmatic is we have an API interface that now speaks universally to identity, network, storage, server. It's actually a really different approach now. We can actually talk on one language plane to all these different layers and then cross-correlate across them. So this is actually enabling a whole new era of security for us, and it's one of those things that we were excited to talk about. Yeah, little box. This all changed. So why is it cool? Because the vectors have actually totally changed. This didn't happen in the data center. We call this the side door to the cloud. So when you think about it, it's not like someone puts up a new server inside your firewall in the cloud and then someone can get total control of your data center because that server came online. That just generally doesn't happen that common in the real world unless you're getting hardcore ODA'd. But what's happened is we've taken this stack where you had, you could call it a 3-tier stack, whatever you want to call it. It's just logical. Your web application hosts are kind of the same. These are containerized functions that you can just port around wherever you want. And the way we defend applications and services at the app layer, secure coding lifecycle, verifying your OAuths top 10 and 20 are being guarded against, doing typical, Qualys kind of app scan. This kind of stuff isn't that new, and it's not really changing much. What changed was we talk about where are all my data records that really matter. We actually dissolved the typical layer of running giant Oracle and SQL clusters and pushed those into managed database services and a lot of infrastructure. We've also taken the traditional storage hosts, which, by the way, as much as we all pay for them, there's a big stack of Unix or Windows boxes, right? We've taken those and dissolved those, and we've stored all these objects into like storage services. They can be archival, they can be object store, it can be Dropbox for all we care, right? Someone else is giving us a presentation layer that we engage and push data to, and when we need the data back, we ask for it. And that contract of getting that back and forth at an acceptable latency has said we don't have to manage these things. The other thing it said implicitly that we all don't accept is that now I have to figure out how to protect it over in these services where they're publicly accessible. So in the data center, no one can just walk through the wall into your infrastructure and start ripping out servers. We have multiple instances where publicly accessible cloud APIs have led to the complete demise of companies in this industry. H.D. Moore's paper on S3 bucket walking, their global namespace. You can just type in random names, and eventually you're going to get hits back. And you'll get hits back that have medical records, legal records, because there's so many permutations, and there's so many micro wrappers of security policy around every instance of an object that you can create or an asset in the cloud, that how do you know that the 3 billionth object you've created is consistent with the other 2.99 billion, right? How do you know someone internally didn't change that policy and make it accessible and pop the link on Pastebin so everyone's now pulling down your entire payroll record? Like, this is actually the challenge you face in the cloud now, because we're no longer in complete control, but we have a new way to kind of think about this. I will become very unpopular very quickly. We haven't done a good job in the industry of product. And I started on the security product side of the house and then went Defender, and now I'm back on product. We haven't done a good job keeping up with the change. I mean, Chef and Puppet and these infrastructure as code components have been around 5, 7+ years, right? And really popular the past 3 or 4. Where's the security innovation been like, right? We still think that you can just take, and I kid you not, I won't name names. I had vendors who were like, take this big load balancer that you have in your data center and just, deploy our virtual appliance in the cloud. It'll do the exact same thing. And you sit there and you're like, I went through this whole iteration of redesigning my architecture, the way I think of things and concepts, and loosely coupling my application and destroying all these concepts, 20 years of infrastructure. And now you want me to undo that and then put something right in the middle of it that's a giant single point of failure. This is not the way that we engineer for cloud. And fundamentally, the failing has been the forward thinkers and thought leaders that have embraced programmatic infrastructure have not been those security companies. They're still building products and solving challenges they know happen in the data center. Meanwhile, the world's kind of moving into a new paradigm, and we're lagging because of it. And part of that challenge also is the way that we've structured ourselves in an industry and community. And if you think about it, the DevOps community has done a great job with ChefCon, PuppetCon, all these DevOps-centric conferences. People get up here and they open the kimono and they dump all their innovation out. And you guys can copy it and get it off GitHub and go home and start from their new baseline. Fundamentally, in the security industry, we've not been as open and we've not been as welcoming to others, and we haven't been able to share as illicitly as that community has. That's one of the things that we have to think about in the social layer of changing over time, or else we're going to be stuck here. So how do you freshen the stack, right? Think about it. There's a whole set of major services that comprise probably 60 to 70% of your infrastructure in the cloud that are completely API driven. No IP address, can't network scan them, can't nmap them, nothing. All you get is, hey, the API endpoint's open. But you know what? There's thousands of functions and millions of assets behind those APIs that you now have to actually protect and think about how you guard. And if you go top down, I'm an old network nerd, so I kind of went to the OSI model kind of around here. You think about the business process. That's ADP Workday. None of us are going to worry about that. By the way, they're the original cloud service that if your company says we don't use cloud services, ask them where your payroll and your social security and all your benefits data is. Someone else's cloud. Application security, still relatively the same. We're getting new cloud intelligent WAFs. Signal Sciences, shout out. Those guys are awesome and put out some new product this week. We have cloud-aware agents, so we've seen the endpoint evolve to understand, but the endpoint hasn't evolved to understand that we're going to have, totally serverless infrastructure like AWS Lambda and some of these other code pass kind of layers. And then you have all the rest of this: identity, network, administrative relationships and roles, regionality of your data that is only accessible through API and protected as such. I don't know if Adrian's here. If he is, I want $5 after this. Adrian's just totally nailed it. The first analyst I saw that really got it. And it was like, you can now push a button and destroy a data center. How scary is that, right? If the wrong person can get credentials or can phish you, boop, good night. Oh, by the way, your backups are in the cloud? Those are gone too. That's how frightening it is. And that's how much onus is on the people running infrastructure. And not to scare people, the people running infrastructure tend to be people with not a ton of security experience and not the battle scars that a lot of people here have from making mistakes and having to do incident response and correct it over time. So how do you kind of bridge the gap? Totally makes sense that we go security as code, right? If these API-driven services are completely code-oriented, and on the back end of what our security infrastructure looks like is like a JSON blob, then we can actually build automation around that construct, knowing that if what we do to the infrastructure through that JSON is what comes out the other end, because the providers are using automation to build from that same JSON blob, then we create a one-to-one construct in security where we say, what I say is what I do, and what I say is what you do. So now that means watching the shift and the dynamism in your environment programmatically allows you to intercede programmatically. So it's not, oh, by the way, someone launched a bunch of Bitcoin mining machines in a region in APAC at 3 a.m. It means if someone launches anything that I don't want to be launched, terminate it immediately, right? Don't page someone and have a human wake up and go log in and see if they can figure out what's wrong. We can articulate what security means in the cloud, and we can actually enforce it programmatically, which is something we've not been able to effectively do before. Totally basic example. This is Amazon JSON structure. So that looks horrible on the screen. Sorry. 50% of the time we see people who are building and rolling new images and talking about patch management in the cloud and all these things struggle with it. And the reason they struggle with it is, how do you know what should be where at any point in time? Humans are horrible at going around and taking like AMI image IDs and knowing which one should be in every region, because they are different in every region. Thank you, Amazon. They're different in every region. They change as you roll out new patches. So if you guys have like the SSL issues that came out recently, you have to all of a sudden patch and re-roll your images globally and roll it back out. People have gotten sophisticated enough to actually bake and build AMIs using infrastructure automation and push them. But then on the back end, the security process is broken. We have successfully seen people start to actually integrate these audits and checks into the CI/CD pipeline. So while you're actually doing a build and push of a new image, not only does it mark that as the new golden image, so you know what's no longer in date, so you have a complete inventory of what has to be taken out of date or taken out of infrastructure, you also now can say globally, is anything running during the lifecycle of this image that's not approved? Like, you want to know, I'm an attacker. I get access to your cloud infrastructure. I'm not going to launch your golden image, guys. I'm not going to launch the thing that's got your, cloud passage agent or has your Splunk agent so I can give myself away. I go pull something from the marketplace and launch it, and you never know. Because there's no way for you to actually track these things unless you're actually looking for it and you have a known good state that you can track against. At the same time, you start talking about like, hey, what are the right security roles that I can apply to these assets? And a server machine is one thing. You can do this around an object you store in S3. You can do this around things you store in Google's object store. Like, these assets all have roles and rights and permissions. They're all equal class citizens now. And that's actually a really unique situation for us that has never happened before. Everything was subservient to a host. So you can go say, hey, is someone using the right security group for it? And not only that, I can query back when something happens, pull the security group for all the relevant image IDs, and push ACL updates to that security group programmatically. So now what you're seeing is the trend where we not only know what's not right and not in compliance, but we can take remediary action, and we can actually start taking immediate defense and immunization against our environments, where we can go and say, this event's happened somewhere. We want to immunize the rest of our herd of instances, Amazon accounts, cross-functional teams, or people that are doing threat feeds on the internet, consume those, and push a remediary action to guard ourselves against continued attacks. I don't know how many people here run an Amazon or Google or Azure. Any raise of hands? So most people. How many people are programmatically auditing your infrastructure at least on an hourly basis? Okay, good set of hands. That's more than we've actually seen a lot of times. How many people can take automated remediary action based on that data? Awesome. So this is something that more people should be aware of. It's not incident response in the sense that a person does it. It's incident response in that you force things into conformity through programmatic action. Other interesting things, all this API data is relevant to cross-correlate against other known good states and other pieces of your infrastructure. So hundreds and thousands of API calls and asset structures you can return. This is one where you can derive 7 or 10 different security verifications and compliance actions. And it doesn't stop there. The APIs keep growing. So there's always more for us to be doing. This is where we get to the topic, right? The ruggedization of your process. I'm not going to go into talking and telling you guys how you build code securely. I'm not going to tell you guys how to build tests and assets. I'm not going to tell you how to deploy. What I'm going to tell you is that each of these steps, there's a place for security to be part of the DNA. It's not supposed to be something that comes at the end of the deployment where someone has to come in and do an audit or a scan. As you're catching things through development cycle, through the test cycle, as it moves from dev, test, stage, prod, and in production before you promote it from an A/B or a blue-green deployment stack, you can actually, in real time, fail builds based on security verifications, audits, checks, whatever you want to call them. And in fact, you can actually create corrections to prevent builds from failing. So if your build goes through and you push out last week's template for security groups in Amazon, so you know you've had rule updates since then, not only will the systems that you build catch this, they'll actually fix it so you don't fail the build and waste a bunch of time by opening tickets and having someone go update a template. You can still do that remediary action on the back end, but in line you can fix and save a build, which is something that security's never really been well known for. Like, we're not always like, hey, you guys saved something and made it go out the door faster. This is the time where security actually accelerates things, and you guys get a better seat at the table. Refresh the approach, yeah. This is where we get to have some fun about examples of things. Anyone here scanning like still on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis? Don't lie. It's okay. It's dirty laundry. That's fully acceptable for a lot of people. The funniest thing is a lot of those scans in the cloud world or the programmatic world are out of date by the time the PDF is generated and mailed to you. Because events have changed. People are building and deploying on an hourly basis, right? It doesn't work in dynamic environments. The new hot stuff's continuous scanning real time for threats. And a threat, remember, let's boil it down. Someone making an accidental mistake in the way that they've structured your security posture, leaving an open attack surface, is a threat against your organization. It doesn't have to be the scary people across the water. It doesn't have to be, the government trying to infiltrate and Trojan your software. It can be anything as simple as it could be, because the threat is your organization's at risk and will lose reputation, data, and customers and revenue if you aren't putting your best foot forward at all times. I'll give you guys a quick example. Over time, things happen, and things don't happen in a monolithic sense. An identity change alone is not generally a security event that a lot of people are too scared of, because that happens. But if you correlate an identity change and an unapproved image launch that potentially is malicious, that should totally trigger quarantining action, because a sequence of events is a pattern of attack, much like a set of network packets is a pattern of attack. But these things happen at the infrastructure level, and they're events that create change and mutation in your environment. They're not things that are simply a chain of network packets that come together that you have to reassemble on the back end. It's a totally different way of perceiving what's happening, and then it's gone. The attackers have achieved a goal. They've changed the policy on a particular file, and they delete the instance and the identity that was there. How do you know it ever existed? This can happen. We've seen this happen as fast as 3 to 4 minutes. People are programmatic and they're fast, and it's really scary that you will never know what happened if you're not really paying attention. New cloud monitoring tech, lots of really cool things. This will go up. Security Monkey from Netflix, Prezi's Red Alert built on ETA, ISAC Partner Scout 2. We're a commercial product, all disclaimer. And there's a bunch of cool emerging things that are coming out that we're staying on top of. I think there's really interesting things that happen in the OSS and commercial side here. Definitely something you guys should be checking out. If you don't always build it yourself, build on top of some work that other really good people have built. Single-purpose host-based technology. Not only is host-based really in danger right now if the programmatic Lambda-style containerization worked really well, like we could get away from running operating systems at all. I'm sure a bunch of people in here would like that time back from patch management and all that other fun hardening work. But we're already doing a lot of it. Infrastructure as code, Puppet, Ansible, Chef, these things that all of a sudden you think is a configuration state is actually OS hardening. It's, making sure you're reducing ports operating and guaranteeing secure traffic. It's dynamically pushing firewall changes to the host level if you need to have it, based on everything as simple as error code counts coming out of file logs. Things like, patching Heartbleed, another great excuse for you to actually push security down to these kinds of systems that can really help. Some good resources here. Once again, this will come back up. I'll give you guys about 5 seconds before I kill that so people can grab pictures. Look in these config management communities. They're really starting to push security harder because security people are coming to the community rather than them having to chase us, and that's actually an exciting time. Manual audits, like the cool one, right? Everyone likes the image. Automated compliance audit. Who here has to do compliance? Yeah. How would you like to have a lot of that stuff happen on the back end and you only get a report that people are fixing things? That'd be me and most everyone else. We have seen auditors come in and actually be able to go through a set of data, not only showing where you are today as a proof point, because structured data from a system is binary. It's not a human telling them they have to double check it for more evidence. It is the evidence. But also the proof that as we deviate 95% of the time, we're in compliance within an hour again because the system's actually reflexive or gets people involved fast. Compliance over time is much better than compliance in a fire drill. And that's what we've been trained to do historically. The small course corrections make it a heck of a lot easier at the end of the year when you have to recertify. Reactive behavior, which is where most of us have spent a lot of our time. Automated defense, totally. I mean, I've been alluding to this the whole time. I'm going to call out Rich Mogul deserves a lot of credit because he was the first, not only analyst, but one of the first tech people I saw that openly published the idea that you can actually forcibly correct things that happen that shouldn't happen and forcibly quarantine events. Another great piece of software you guys can take and build on top of if you need to. Articulate what should happen and what shouldn't happen and guard against what shouldn't happen programmatically. It's the difference of fixing things in seconds or spending months cleaning up afterwards. It really is. Getting rugged is a journey. This is kind of the last one, and I'll leave you guys some time to talk. Security doesn't happen. Like, as much as we would like to buy it in a box and deploy it and have it solve all of our problems, everyone here is pragmatic enough to know that we build, and we may buy certain technologies and build against them. What really happens here is we need to be focusing on forcing the industry and forcing the thinking to be not only give me the functionality I need, but allow me to extend and build on top of it. That means API-enabled security products are the thing that all of us should be pushing the industry towards, not specialized GUIs or things like that. Those things are terrible. Automate the security behaviors. This goes back to the same thing. The environment's too dynamic. I don't care how good everyone here is. I don't care how good I think I was in my heyday, how much Red Bull I've had in me. I cannot react fast enough to the millions of permutations of events that happen on a daily basis on a common cloud environment. We have to shift our thinking. We have to lean back on what we know well, which is technology and the defenses that we understand and understand how they apply to these cloud environments. And then this is one where I'll get a lot of oohs and ahs. I encourage all of you, go find your DevOps team or your ops team and sit down for lunch and be like, how can I help you with security? How can I make it part of the process? And if you can champion the marriage of these two, almost silos, a lot of the problems that we face in security go away. You're welcome a seat at the table. You get more honest answers. It's not adversarial. It's accelerating the business. And what ends up happening is you create relationships and you create a perception of the information security professional industry that spark conversations. And what comes from here is conversations where we can all openly talk and share more assets like the assets that I mentioned after various parts of this presentation, and drive the community forward. Because as good as we all are individually in our businesses, we're a hell of a lot better together, especially when we're fighting against a common cause. So I think that's it. I do on time. Okay. Thank you.
And Tim, thank you today for sharing your valuable knowledge. And on behalf of BSides and Fitbit, we'd like to give you a gift.
Awesome.
All right?
Thank you.
And thank you for joining today. There's three things, announcements. Basically, there's drink tickets available in the bar in the main room, and also real food with appetizers. And there's also a raffle for very high-end Beats headphones. So take your chances. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.